Hello there, and welcome to the re-uploaded second episode of our Interview with the Expert series. We have a very talented historical writer joining us today. He is most well known for his book The August Gales, which won the 2014 Atlantic Book Award for historical writing. Today he has kindly offered to read us a section of his latest book, As British as the King. Please allow me to introduce you to Gerald Hallowell.
There are many topics that I could pick from the book, but I've decided to talk about fishermen in wartime. Now, during the First World War, there was one important way in which the fishermen of Lunenburg County had a good war. They prospered. According to the Canadian Fisherman, which was the journal of the fishing industry, trips to the banks in 1917 by 97 vessels and almost 1,900 men resulted in the largest catch in the history of the fleet. At the same time, prices for fish rose to new heights. 1918, claimed the Progress Enterprise of Lunenburg, was the most profitable year since the inception of the fleet. The total catch that year was valued at $3.5 million, which of course is quite a lot of money for that period. One of the reasons for this was that there had been less competition from European fishermen because of the war. And there was a program to sell fish to feed the soldiers, and they also encouraged civilians to eat fish so that there would be more meat available for the troops. Fishing, of course, was the major industry in Lunenburg, and it's notable that the first fisherman's picnic in Lunenburg took place during the war in the fall of 1916. Nevertheless, all was far from rosy in the fishermen's world. As the war progressed and casualties mounted, fishermen were increasingly being urged to enlist in the army, and eventually they were conscripted into the army. It had been expected that as producers of food, like farmers, the fishermen would be exempted from the draft. The man who stayed at home and produced food that was so necessary at the time was surely doing his duty to the empire as much as the men in the trenches. As journalist Agnes McGuire wrote, "Fishing was no work for weaklings, nor can women do it. The men simply could not be replaced on the schooners." William Duff, who was mayor of Lunenburg at the time and the local member of parliament, observed in the House of Commons that fishing and shipbuilding could not be done by old men and boys. And he strongly objected to suggestions that fishermen who did not join up were shirking. I think the members of this House will agree with me that men who leave their homes on the 15th of March, when ice is on the coast and the March winds and gales are blowing, and go out and anchor 150 miles from land, and every morning at daylight start off in the dories and haul their trawls, and continue that occupation for perhaps a month before they see land again. Men who pursue that occupation all through the summer fogs and during the August and September gales before returning home cannot be called slackers or cowards. In June 1918, a near riot occurred on the Lunenburg waterfront as fishermen of the town and the nearby village of Blue Rocks resisted the draft. It's not surprising that some of the men felt betrayed. Farmers' sons had been assured, wrongly as it turned out, that they would be exempt because they were needed on the farms. Likewise for the fishermen. During the controversial Canadian election of 1917, the Bridgewater Bulletin, in a last-minute, rather dishonest attempt to sway voters, assured its readers that the Prime Minister himself, Sir Robert Borden, had stated that all men engaged in fishing would be exempt from military service. It wasn't a lie, but it was certainly next thing to it. Excuse me. Harangued on land to join up, at sea the fishermen faced a more ferocious enemy, the German submarines. With the convoy system in place by mid-1917, largely protecting the merchant vessels, the U-boats turned their attention to the isolated fishing schooners, and in the end they sank about 11 from the county. The crew was placed in dories, often with little in the way of supplies, and they were forced to row a long way to shore. The vessels were bombed and sunk. The lives of the men were saved, but as one fisherman declared in Peter Barce's A Portrait of Lunenburg County, "But it wasn't so nice, you know, to lose all your clothes and all that fish and everything gone to the bottom. Nothing to live on, nothing." And that's how it went, fishing during the war. The times were indeed hard. There were rumors of spies in the land, and at night the lights of the town were blacked out. Once again, in September 1918, as the war was drawing to a close, William Duff praised the fishermen at war, portraying them as brave and fearless heroes. A race of men who go down to the sea in ships and do business on the great waters, in spite of the submarine menace. A breed of manly men who left the ports of Lunenburg and La Havre during the past 60 days, when they were warned against submarines, to carry the merchandise of this country to foreign lands. Hearts of oak, some 3,000 of them, who left this county in March last in their 100-ton boats to pursue their avocation amid the storms, fogs, and perils of the Atlantic. Vikings, who departed from their homes to do their bit by producing food, knowing full well the submarine might show her nose across their bow at any time during the trip and send them to a watery grave. Thank you.
Before I say anything, I would like to give a big thank you to Gerald Hallowell for allowing the privilege of making a video about his new book, As British as the King. That being said, if this piqued your interest, I hope that you consider buying and reading through Gerry's books. I've put up a few links in the description of this video that will help you find where to buy them. Anyhow, I hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Knaut Rhuland House Online, and have a wonderful day. Take care and see you in the next episode.